let's talk about something that's quietly draining money from skilled nursing facilities every single day: common coding errors. You know, these little mistakes can seem minor, but they quietly siphon away revenue and can even trigger audits. Understanding them isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely critical for your facility's financial health.
Yeah, this quote really hits the nail on the head. Under the patient-driven payment model, or PDPM, the system is just so sensitive that one wrong code doesn't just create a small hiccup. No, it creates a massive ripple effect that can cost you thousands on a single claim. The stakes here are incredibly high. So, here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at just how big this problem really is. Then, we'll dive into the three main culprits: those critical diagnosis errors, mismatches in your data, and gaps in your process. And then we'll wrap up by looking at how an AI-powered safety net can, well, make all the difference.
Okay, let's start with the core issue. The PDPM system, as you know, is incredibly complex, and while it's designed to match payments to actual patient needs, that complexity is a real double-edged sword. It creates all these little traps where seemingly minor coding mistakes can lead to major underpayments and, just as important, can put a giant red flag on your claims for auditors. It becomes this hidden, constant drain that many facilities don't even realize is happening. All right, let's get into our first major category of errors. And honestly, this is the most fundamental one. If you get the diagnosis wrong, the entire reimbursement calculation is built on a faulty foundation. This is where the biggest, most immediate financial losses really come from. You see, pretty much everything hinges on that primary diagnosis. This single code is what determines the entire case mix group. It's the first domino to fall. If you get it wrong, that patient is immediately put in the wrong payment category, and that almost always means a lower reimbursement than what you're actually owed for the care you provided.
And this really breaks down that chain reaction for us. First, you get that primary diagnosis wrong, and the whole case is thrown off. Next, maybe you miss some secondary diagnoses, which directly tanks your nursing and non-therapy ancillary, your NTA scores. And finally, and this one is huge, you fail to capture those crucial NTA comorbidities. We're talking about things like specific meds or treatments that are often buried deep in the notes, but lead to major underpayment if they're missed. This is exactly where an AI solution acts like a detective, validating that primary diagnosis and hunting through all the documentation to find those missed details.
Okay, next up, we're talking about consistency, or a lack of it. When the story that your billing codes are telling doesn't match the story in the clinical notes, you're basically rolling out the red carpet for auditors. These mismatches are just massive compliance risks. You can really see the two paths a claim can take here, right? On one side, you've got the dream, a clean, compliant claim where everything, the MDS, the notes, the codes, tells one consistent, solid story. But on the other side, you see the red flags that auditors are trained to spot from a mile away. Mismatches, codes that have no documentation, and flat-out contradictions.
So let's dig into the specific culprits. First, you've got inconsistent ICD-10 diagnosis codes scattered across different documents. Next, there's therapy coding that just doesn't logically connect to the patient's actual condition. And the biggest one of all, any code that simply isn't backed up by clear clinical evidence. This is where an AI solution acts as a validation engine, cross-checking everything to flag these problems before claim ever goes out the door.
All right, our last big category of errors is a little different. It's not about one bad code, it's about the workflow itself. These are the kinds of mistakes that happen when processes break down, when deadlines get missed, or when a patient's condition changes but the coding never gets updated to reflect that. And that's what makes these gaps so incredibly dangerous. Think about it. A single coding error affects one claim, but a broken process, that affects claim after claim after claim. It creates a systemic problem that just keeps compounding your revenue loss over time, all until that underlying workflow is finally fixed. So what does this look like in practice? Well, late MDS updates can lock you into an old, lower reimbursement rate. If you don't handle interrupted stays correctly, that can lead to direct payment errors. And as a patient's condition evolves, if you fail to revalidate their codes, you're just not being paid accurately for the care you're now providing. This is where automation really shines. It acts like a continuous internal audit, tracking timelines, monitoring stays, and prompting your team whenever an action is needed. So, we've seen all the problems. Now let's talk about the solution. And it's all about a huge shift in mindset. Moving away from being reactive, fixing errors after they've already cost you money, to being proactive and stopping them from ever happening in the first place. And that is the role of the AI-powered safety net. And it's not magic. It's actually a really logical 4-step process. First, the AI system just takes in all the relevant clinical data. We're talking notes, labs, the MDS, all of it. Then, step 2, it meticulously cross-references every single code against all that documentation. If it finds a mismatch, a missing piece of info, or an unsupported code, boom! Step 3, it flags it for a human reviewer. And the final result, step 4, is a clean, accurate, and compliant claim that's ready to go.
So what's the payoff? Well, it's huge. First and foremost, you protect your revenue, making sure you get paid for all the care you provide. You're also ensuring every single claim is audit-ready right from the start. That, in turn, frees up your amazing skilled staff from doing all those tedious reviews so they can focus on patient care. And, maybe most importantly, you finally stop those systemic, recurring errors before they can ever take root. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. Because with PDPM, coding errors aren't just about denials. They're a silent erosion of your revenue. With this level of complexity, it's really not a matter of if errors are happening, but how many are hiding in your very next claim submission. And finding them is absolutely critical.